Hello all, welcome to Abhiram IAS Academy. Let us go through our daily chronicles of January 7th, 2025. So today we are going to discuss one detailed analysis of Indo-US nuclear deal. US is planning to remove India from the restricted list, and we also have our daily snippets for prelims. Meta moves to National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, and we also discuss about the national anthem controversy and cowpea seeds which were germinated in space. What is Indo-US nuclear deal and what is the energy mix of India? And we also get to know about India's nuclear journey and all the major nuclear conventions at the global level. So the article is this: US planning to remove Indian entities from the restricted list, says Jake Sullivan. Who is Jake Sullivan? He is the National Security Advisor in US. Okay. So this topic is relevant for our GS2, that is bilateral and multilateral relations, and also GS3, infrastructure topic, where we have energy and subtopic nuclear energy. It is also important for prelims because we are going to discuss all the basics and concepts regarding this nuclear journey. So let us understand the comparison of primary energy supply mix and installed power capacity. What is the difference between primary energy and the power capacity installed? Primary energy is nothing but energy which is coming from all the sources, and it is used for multiple purpose other than electricity itself. So in power capacity, it is only the source of electricity generation, but in energy supply, we also use for transport and heat. Transport, we use fossil fuels like petrol and diesel, whereas in heat, we use in villages cooking fuel and wood. Okay. Any agricultural residues also come under this. Then, what are the differences? It is covering all the energy types, but this is only electricity. We have metric of measurement also, that is also different. Million ton oil equivalent or exajoules, and here we have power megawatt or gigawatt. So million ton oil equivalent, it is a globally standard measure for this primary energy because oil has a proper energy content, and 1 ton of oil produces around 41.8 gigajoules of energy. So that is the constant here, which doesn't change with any density changes or any other processing changes or quality of raw material changes like in natural gas or coal, because in natural gas or coal there will be changes in the quality of the raw material processing, because of which the amount of energy it has will differ. That's why we use oil as a constant here, and we measure all the primary energy sources in terms of this oil, exajoules and million ton oil equivalent. So exajoules is around 10 power 18 joules. Okay. Next, sectoral scope is also broad. We already discussed. It is used for all the purposes: transport, industry, residential purposes, even our cooking gas in our homes is also coming under primary energy and not installed power capacity. Okay, so these are the major differences. Let us have a look at our India's primary energy supply mix in 2022-23. This is the pie chart from our economic survey, latest one, and let us go through the details. So total primary energy supply is 885 million ton oil equivalent. How much? 885 million ton oil equivalent. So let us understand the components of this. What are the components? So we have coal, natural gas, oil and petroleum, hydro, solar and wind, bioenergy and nuclear. So, but there is an order for this also. Let us remember the order. First comes coal. 47% or around half of the primary energy mix is dominated by coal alone. Then we have second, oil and petroleum. Oil and petroleum, that accounts for 29%. You can remember it as 30%. So coal is 47, whereas oil and petroleum is around 30%. Next, Surprisingly, not natural gas or nuclear or any other renewable, but bioenergy. Why bioenergy? Because villages use predominantly cooking coal or any wood or agricultural residue, and also households use natural gas for cooking. All these come under primary energy, but not the installed power capacity. Even in industries, we have some primary energy usage. For example, sugarcane industry, the processed byproduct is bagasse, okay, that is also a source of bioenergy. So like that. Next we have natural gas. Natural gas accounts for 7%. Then we have nuclear, okay, not renewable. So nuclear is fourth. Let us come from the bottom to understand the ascending order also. So last comes wind. So wind is the last in primary energy supply mix. Then comes solar and then hydro. So what is the order from the bottom? It is wind, solar and hydro. So this is the order. Let us understand the installed power capacity also. So installed power capacity, how much is the installed power capacity? 443 gigawatts. So 1 gigawatt you can understand as 1000 megawatts, and 1 megawatt is 1000 kilowatts, like that, and 1 kilowatt is 1000 watts. Okay, so this is the units. So gigawatts is nothing but 10 to the power 9 watts. So let us understand the power capacity and what is the composition of this installed power capacity in India. So we have, let us go through the order. Again, first we have coal, which is 48% or 211 gigawatts. 211 gigawatts. What is the total? It is 443 gigawatts. Okay, 443 gigawatts is the power capacity, whereas what is the energy mix? 885 million ton oil equivalent. So this is 443 gigawatts. So we have, and then solar is 19%, 19 or 20% you can remember. It is 83 gigawatts. Then comes large hydro, 11% or 47 gigawatts. Then we have wind. Okay, fourth is wind, 10% or 46 gigawatts. Then gas, bioenergy, and comes nuclear. So nuclear is fourth from the bottom in power capacity. Then what are the bottom ones here? Diesel is the bottom one, and then comes small hydro and lignite. So diesel, small hydro and lignite. So let us understand the nuclear journey of India. So 1948 to 1974. Initially in 1948, our nuclear journey began with the setting up of Atomic Energy Commission by Homi Bhabha. Okay. So he was the head of this Atomic Energy Commission, and then our journey began. Next comes Atoms for Peace program. It was a peaceful use of nuclear energy for civilian purposes. What are civilian purposes? It can be multiple things like energy, okay, even agricultural research, and also medicinal purposes. So our radioisotopes are used in these also. So all these come under civilian purpose. So US and Canada gave their cooperation for technological transfer to India under the program Atoms for Peace. And then in 1964, China has conducted its first nuclear test. So because of this, India began contemplating whether should we have any nuclear weapon of our own to protect our national sovereignty. So thus began the thinking, and in 1974, we conducted Smiling Buddha. So Smiling Buddha is also called as Pokhran 1. Why Pokhran? Name. So Pokhran is nothing but the test range which is in Rajasthan. So that's why it got the name Pokhran, and also the operation was named Smiling Buddha. Smiling Buddha was actually a secret code name till its execution, but it also has other significance because it was conducted on Buddha Purnima, and also Buddhism originated in India. So that's why this is the significance. Besides that, Buddha also signifies peace, okay, and non-violence, which means we are communicating that we don't have any military intent in this operation. 1974 to 1998, we can see the phase 2 of India's nuclear journey. On May 18th, we had conducted Smiling Buddha, we have already seen. With this began our problems because the global community has isolated us, that is, our nuclear isolation has begun in 1974. In fact, till 1974, we also advocated for comprehensive test ban treaty, that is complete ban of all the nuclear weapons. So it sounded hypocritic when we tested our nuclear weapons. But why is this important? Why are nuclear weapons important? Because we have our own adversaries which are powerful like China, and they have nuclear weapons, and they have demonstrated in 1964 test in an international arena where there is no common body to enforce any common laws or ensure any international order. It will be chaotic. Okay, each nation will act on its own self-interest. So that's why if our adversary is powerful, to balance them, we are forced to become powerful and acquire such weapons of mass destruction or nuclear weapons. So that is the necessity. Then we have nuclear suppliers group also formed in response to this Pokhran test only. Okay. Then India, then comes NPT, that is Non-Proliferation Treaty. Non-Proliferation Treaty is a treaty which aims to stop or prevent proliferation of nuclear weapons to other countries which do not yet have the nuclear weapons, and also even those with the nuclear weapons try to control them and reduce them. So these are the promises which are made. But India refuses this non-proliferation treaty. Why did it refuse? Because non-proliferation treaty at the inception itself, it has divided the nation states as nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. So it is discriminatory. So you are saying not to create any nuclear weapons, but you are saying we can have it. We can have our own nuclear weapons, but you cannot have it. It is so that's why India did not accept this discrimination, and citing that discrimination, we refused to sign the NPT. And who are the signatories of NPT? Because the NPT recognizes the nuclear weapon states only, all the 5 permanent members and the nuclear weapon states have signed this NPT. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed them. All the nuclear weapon states which are not yet recognized as nuclear powers did not sign this. So they are India, Pakistan, and Israel. They have nuclear weapons, but because they were not recognized as the nuclear powers, they did not sign this. And one curious case is North Korea. North Korea has signed the NPT initially, but it withdrew in 2003. Okay, so we can see why a responsible nuclear power posture is important in the global community. North Korea, being a dictatorship, failed to adhere to the international commitments. Though it promised, it did not adhere to it, and eventually it withdrew. But India, being a democracy and a population of 1.4 billion, we are responsible, and we have multi-party system, multi-party democracy, and some strong institutions like judiciary, freedom of press. So all this contributed to India being a responsible power. So when there is no one or no power to check the authoritarianism tendencies, eventually the cases like North Korea will repeat. So that is the problem, and we have to be responsible nuclear power. And also in 1974 to 1998, we conducted some covert weapon tests also in fear of all the sanctions which were imposed on us after the Smiling Buddha. Then there also came dual use technology sanctions. What is dual use technology? So any technology which can be used for multiple purposes is called as dual use. It is not just nuclear technology which can be used for both energy and military purposes, But there are other examples also. For example, drones or unmanned aerial vehicles can be used for both surveillance by military and also in agricultural spraying of any agricultural inputs like fertilizers, pesticides. So that is also a dual use technology. So these are the examples. And even the chemical or biological technologies can also be used to save the humanity but also kill the humanity by developing weapons. So that is also dual use technology. Next comes May 11 to 13 Pokhran 2 test. This is also called as Operation Shakti because it was named as Shakti 1. So we have conducted totally 5. We have detonated totally 5 nuclear weapons, and in May 11 to 13 of 1998 we have posted ourselves as a nuclear power. So with 1998 we began our phase 3 of India's nuclear journey. Sanctions were imposed because of Pokhran 2, and however we have gradually re-engaged with the global community in the nuclear arena, especially after Bill Clinton's visit. So they have eventually announced civil nuclear deal. The announcement has come, but the modalities has to be worked out yet. So eventually US Congress has passed the Hyde Act. Who is Hyde? Henry J. Hyde is the one who supported US-India civil nuclear cooperation. So honoring them, the act was named after him. Then we have NSG Viver. So NSG is actually a group, nuclear suppliers group, which has control over the export of the nuclear raw materials to the countries. But it was formed in reaction to the India's Pokhran 1 test. So we also obtained waiver from this group with US support. And also we have other nuclear conventions like Missile Technology Control Regime, Wassenaar Arrangement, Australia Group. India has eventually joined all these groups after the NSG waiver that gave legitimacy at the global arena to India's nuclear program. So let us look at the reserves, uranium reserves in India. So this is Chhattisgarh Basin, and this is Kadapa Basin in Andhra and Telangana. We have Chhattisgarh Basin, and Jharkhand we have Singhbum Thrust Belt, and then Bhima Basin is in Karnataka, and in Rajasthan we have Aravalis, and in Meghalaya we have Mahadek Basin. Okay, these are the uranium reserves. Let us also understand the thorium deposits. So thorium deposits majorly are in Ranchi Plateau of Jharkhand, and we all know monazite sands of Kerala also hold these thorium reserves. So the location is Chavara in Kerala, and Tamil Nadu Manavala Kurichi. So these are the regions. In Odisha we have Chhatrapur. Chhatrapur also has thorium reserves. So the element is extracted from monazite ore that contains 9% thorium. So monazite ore has 9% thorium. We can extract thorium from this. Next, let us understand the India's nuclear energy strategy. There are numerous stages in this nuclear energy strategy. Stage 1, 2 and 3. Let us have a look at the stage 1. So stage 1 is pressurized heavy water reactor. It uses natural uranium, that is U-235 and U-238. So U is uranium symbol. What is 235 and 238? So atomic number of uranium is 92, but with the isotopes of neutrons, we have higher mass number to this, that is 235 indicates both protons and neutrons in the nucleus. So 238 also the same. So it has both protons and neutrons, that is mass number. Then what is the byproduct used in this? What is the byproduct we obtain in this? Plutonium-239. So plutonium-239 is the byproduct. Pressurized heavy water reactor, because heavy water is used as a coolant to absorb all the neutrons. So absorbing neutrons is essential, because if we don't absorb, it becomes uncontrolled chain reaction and can have dangerous consequences, because it can resemble the nuclear weapon then. 6,800 megawatt capacity is already existing in India. Under this stage 1, So there are a lot of pressurized heavy water reactors. What are they? Tarapur. This is in Maharashtra. Then we have Kakrapar. This is in Gujarat. Okay. And Narora is in UP. This entire stage is completely indigenous technology. Next we have stage 2. Stage 2 we have fast breeder reactors. What does breeding mean? So we are producing more than consumption of all the nuclear fuel. So that's why it is called breeder. So what do we breed here? So we breed plutonium-239. So that is the byproduct of the earlier stage, and we also breed it more in this stage also because it is important for our next stage. Okay. So we are breeding more fissile material than consumption, and stage 2 is important because it bridges the stage 1 and stage 3. That is, stage 1 is about limited uranium reserves. We are utilizing our limited uranium reserves. We need extra uranium from the global suppliers. We don't have much, and it also connects the vast thorium reserves of India. So we have thorium but we don't have uranium. So stage 2 is important for that because plutonium-239 is used in the next stage to convert this thorium into a fissile material and useful for energy. So what is the fast breeder reactor in India? Example is Kalpakkam of Tamil Nadu. So but there are some issues. It is technologically complex. It needs advanced safety and skilled manpower. So these are the challenges with this. Stage 3 is the next stage where we use lot of thorium reserves abundant in India and use it for our nuclear energy. So what is the reactor used here? Advanced heavy water reactor. It can make us a sustainable nuclear power because we are not dependent on the supply of the nuclear raw material from outside. We can use our own thorium reserves. So that's why it is a sustainable. It's not dependent on the external factors. So here in this stage, thorium will be converted into uranium-233 using the fissile material we obtained in the earlier stages, plutonium-239. So it is not yet completely matured. It is under development. So there are some issues with this: high cost, advanced technology and limited global experience. There are some cases where thorium reserves are used successfully. Canada's CANDU reactor, okay, and also molten salt reactors. This is in China, okay. So these are successful examples, but the experience has been minimal. So why are the deals important for us? In the nuclear fuel cycle, we are recycling the plutonium in stage 1 and 2 to the 3, and whatever is the spent fuel, we have to manage it in the further stages. So for this we need technology and also some raw material. So these civil nuclear agreements will help in this. Technology sharing and fuel supply, that is raw material uranium. So we are having agreements with US, France and Russia in civil nuclear arena. NPT, let us go through different conventions in the nuclear sphere. So what is NPT? Non-Proliferation Treaty. Its main aim is to prevent the spread of the weapons. How does it aim to prevent the spread of weapons? It has divided the nation states, we have already discussed, into nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. So nuclear weapon states can be allowed to have their weapons, but the whatever non-nuclear weapon states, they have to give up if they are having any, and they should promise not to have any more nuclear weapons in future also. And ultimately, even those with nuclear weapons promise to reduce their nuclear weapons and achieve their goal of nuclear disarmament in the future. So this is paving way for peaceful nuclear cooperation among the nations, but India did not sign because it is discriminatory, and it has not signed. Even other nations which have nuclear weapons but not recognized as nuclear weapons also did not sign. That is, we have already seen India, Pakistan and Israel. CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. What is this about? India has advocated till its Pokhran 1 test for this treaty only, that is Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, banning all the nuclear explosions, not just military but also for civil. That is, even the nuclear energy generation, you cannot have any tests. So, but this has not been successful because it was too prohibitory. They also established an organization, CTBTO, that is Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, to enforce this. But obviously, all the major nuclear weapon states did not sign this, including India, Pakistan, Israel, and all the 5 permanent UN members who have nuclear weapons. Next, NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. So, this group controls the export of the materials, raw materials which are required in the nuclear energy production. It also controls the equipment and technology, not just the raw materials. So, it aims for non-proliferation and prevents any diversion or misuse of the raw materials for any other military purposes. We are giving you raw material so that you can produce nuclear energy because it has fewer greenhouse gas emissions. So, that is the reason nuclear energy is regarded as green. However, it is contentious because of its radioactive waste, and as we have seen in Japan Fukushima disaster, it is very dangerous if things go out of control. Next, after 2008 deal, we got the waiver. Next is Missile Technology Control Regime. So, it deals about missile technology control. So, there are different types of missile technology and they are restricted. Why? Because more than 300 kilometers range and more than 500 kg payload is minimum necessary to carry any nuclear warhead. So, that is why this is the limit. They are capable of delivering weapons of mass destruction. That is why the missile technology is controlled. However, it is just a political understanding informally. It is not legally binding. And India has joined this in 2016. Okay. So, does India have missile technology which can deliver the nuclear weapons? Yes, it has. Our Prithvi and Agni. So, they have the capacity to deliver higher kilos of warheads and to longer ranges. Okay. Agni 6 is around 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers also. So, we have far ranges with higher kilogram payloads. Next comes Wassenaar arrangements. What is this? It is about dual use technology and conventional arms. So, dual use technology we have already discussed. So, there are different technologies which can be used for multiple purposes, something good and something bad also. So, even nuclear we can use it for energy generation but also weapon. So, that is dual use technology and conventional arms. We can understand about the dual use technology, but why conventional arms also? What are conventional arms? They are basically any missiles, tanks. So, all these technologies are also intended to be controlled by bringing transparency and responsibility through Wassenaar arrangement. So, why? Because of terrorism. Okay. If these conventional weapons also go to the terrorist, it can be destructive, and even in volatile regions, politically unstable regions also, they can pose significant problems. So, that is why even these are controlled under Wassenaar arrangement. India has also joined this in 2017. Australia Group. So, what is Australia Group? Australia Group is mainly chemical and biological weapons. So, any kind of chemical and biological weapons, they are trying to prevent the spread of them. So, by controlling the technology. So, the earlier missile, now we have chemical and biological weapons also. So, this is nothing but weapon control. India has joined this also in 2018. Basically, after NSG's waiver, all the major groupings have invited India and accepted India as their members. So, Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So, this is a new treaty. Its ultimate goal is total elimination of all the nuclear weapons in the world, because it tries to impose legal prohibition. But India is a non-signatory. Not just India, but all the nuclear weapon states are not signatories because it is legally prohibited. Next, provisions of Indo-US nuclear deal. So, what are the major provisions of Indo-US nuclear deal? So, we are separating civil and military facilities. So all the civilian facilities can be monitored by IAEA. Okay, they come under IAEA safeguards. Next, for civilian facilities only. Then NSG waiver, nuclear supplies group waiver also is obtained and facilitated Indo-US nuclear deal. Then voluntary moratorium. So India has also imposed on itself a voluntary moratorium promising not to conduct any nuclear weapon tests to obtain the trust and credibility at the global sphere. So we have this advantage of strategic reserves also, where we store the nuclear raw material. Reprocessing rights. Usually the material which is obtained after the NSG waiver from the export countries exporting raw material, uranium, they have to be safeguarded and we cannot reprocess them for military purposes. So, but for civilian purposes, we can use the spent fuel and reprocess it. So, we obtain the reprocessing rights also. The deal also has a termination clause, that is, if any entity, India or US, feels the other has violated, they can terminate the deal. Okay. But there are some friction points in this. What are they? In India-US nuclear deal. So CLNDA, civil liability for any nuclear damage. So that is 2010 Act in India. What is the problem with this? Usually the responsibility for any kind of nuclear damage at the international arena will be on the operator, not on the supplier. But Indian law has made supplier also responsible for this damage compensation. Then we have export control regimes. So export control regimes are also imposing sanctions and they are afraid to send the raw material to India because they are afraid it will be misused. So there is always some level of doubt by others. NSG, NPT and CTBT. So these are the friction points. However, we have obtained the NSG waiver and NPT and CTBT we have not joined. These are the concerns. And Atomic Energy Act of US is also very strict. It doesn't usually allow for sending raw material or technology to the nations which are doubtful of misuse of their technology or raw material. So Atomic Energy Act of US is also very strict. So the article is about US planning to remove India from the restricted list. So if we get removed from this list, we get lot of advantages like easier access to the nuclear raw material and also technology transfer. The statement says fully realize the potential of the nuclear deal. So what does it mean? Maybe they are willing to transfer their technology to India, or the operator liability, as we have seen, which was extended to supplier in the 2010 Civil Liability Act, probably it would be removed. And Biden administration also promised of missile technology control regime updates. So with these updates, probably we'll get missile technologies also which are advanced. Okay. So these are the advantages. Next article is about Meta. Meta is nothing but former Facebook. So it has filed a plea against the Competition Commission of India penalty of 213 crore rupees at NCLAT, that is National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. So what are the processes involved throughout the life cycle and operations of the companies in India? So initial stages, incorporation or registration, this will be done under Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Registrar of Companies. These are the bodies responsible for this. Next we have licensing and compliance requirements. Compliance to what? Various laws like Companies Act, okay, Competition Act or Corporate Social Responsibility Act. So these kind of acts need enforcement and they are the bodies responsible for enforcement. SEBI is for listed companies and RBI is for financial entities. Next, financial compliance will also be overseen by some bodies like Income Tax Department, GST Authority and RBI. Next, operations and governance aspect of the companies is regulated by whom? Ministry of Corporate Affairs and SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India. Then we have dispute resolution mechanism. So this is where the company law tribunal will come. So in the dispute resolution process, what are the bodies involved? National Company Law Tribunal, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, which is appellate tribunal to this one, and also Competition Commission of India. So these are different bodies on dispute resolution. And the regulation might be industry specific, like insurance might be regulated by IRDAI, and companies are regulated by SEBI, whereas banks like financial institutions are regulated by RBI. So regulation is also industry specific. So what is the article about? NCLAT to hear Meta's plea against Competition Commission of India penalty of 213 crore. So WhatsApp has basically, or Meta has basically come up with a privacy policy update in 2021. Under this policy, it has an update which says users have to update mandatorily, but the policy has data sharing. Okay, data sharing provisions which are mandatorily imposed on the users. If users don't want to share their data, they still have to update them to get WhatsApp services. But this is unfair because it is use it or leave it attitude, and there is no opt-out option for the users. So what do they do with the data? They basically share the data with the advertisers. Okay, they share the data with the advertisers without the consent of users. And also it is against the competition, fair competition practices, because it is creating entry barriers. So how is it creating entry barriers? So if you are a new company and you want to advertise about your product, you will go to someone who is already well established with all the data, okay, all the database on his platform, and he will charge you something and he will advertise your product to the users. So he will have unfair advantage by leveraging his dominance and create entry barriers for the others. So that is also anti-competitive practice. Next article is about national anthem controversy. So Tamil Nadu governor has basically walked out of the assembly citing insult to national anthem as the reason. Why? Because it was played at the end. In Tamil Nadu they play the state song at the beginning. Okay, this is just a normal convention. Different states will have different conventions. For example, Nagaland has not played this national anthem for decades. Okay, that is its own convention. So what is the article related to this? It is part 4A, Fundamental Duties, section 51A. Okay, it will be the duty of every citizen to abide by the constitution, respect its ideals, national flag and national anthem. So this is the constitutional provision. So we also have enforcement mechanism by Prevention of Insult to National Honor Act of 1971. But we have already seen there are no uniform conventions across states. It will vary. And Ministry of Home also issued some guidelines regarding the national anthem. You have to stand when there is national anthem playing. You have to be silent. You cannot talk or giggle. And even sitting is considered as disrespecting national anthem, but it is allowed for persons with disabilities. And another one is formal events. It can be played in formal events, public gatherings, but not informal events. So what are the cases related to this national anthem? 1986 we have Bijo Emmanuel case. Basically, Jehovah Witnesses. Jehovah Witnesses is a religious group whose members denied to sing national anthem, but they remain silent. But there was a case filed against this incident citing that as disrespect to the national anthem. So, but the court said forcing individuals to sing national anthem violates their freedoms like freedom of speech 19(1)(a) and 25 right to freedom of religion. So, we cannot force individuals to sing national anthem as per this case, that is Bijo Emmanuel case. Next is 2016 to 18 Shyam Narayan Chowksi case. What is this case? After this case only, national anthems began to be played in cinema halls. Okay, but after controversies, it was made optional in 2018. Next case is 2003 Karan Johar case in the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham. National anthem was played in an informal setting, so there was a case filed against that also, but the court said it was unintentional. There was no intention to disrespect national anthem, so it can be forgiven. So our next article is about cowpea seeds germinated under microgravity environment in space. So it was sent through POEM4 module. The module is named as CROPS, that is Compact Research Orbital Module for Plant Sciences by Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. So why is this significant? So in space it is very difficult to have life support systems, and germinating seeds in this mission is a significant step to enhance our long duration space missions like Gaganyaan and eventually Chandrayaan also. For any future manned missions also, this will be important if the astronauts have to spend much longer time in the space. So they need life support systems, and it is a significant step relevant to that. So how are they germinating these seeds? They managed the thermal environment, and the environment was controlled. Numerous parameters were monitored and controlled like moisture, temperature, humidity. All these were controlled and they successfully germinated these seeds. Okay. Next article is about Taranagar water gushed out from the ground. So Taranagar is in Rajasthan, Jaisalmer. So water has gushed out from a region, and locals thought it was the long lost Saraswati river, but the geologists say otherwise. So it is nothing but an artisan well which is under confined aquifers. So these confined aquifers store water under a lot of pressure because of the impermeable layer above the water. So what are the different types of aquifers? Confined aquifer, unconfined aquifer, perched aquifer, semi-confined and fossil aquifers. These are the basic types. Let us understand by looking at the diagram. So you can see this is a confined aquifer. So this is a confined aquifer. There is an impermeable layer here and also here. So it is confined between two layers. And this is unconfined aquifer. That is, there is no upper layer to confine it under pressure. So usually all the runoff from the rivers or agriculture, monsoon, all this will go to the unconfined aquifer. All the shallow wells we see in the fields are nothing but unconfined aquifer. So this is the perched aquifer water table. It is usually higher than the unconfined aquifer water table or regular water table because of an impermeable layer, and it is localized. Okay, so this is perched aquifer. So these are different types of aquifer. What is semi-confined then? So some layer will be below the impermeable layer, but some will be free. So there will be some space to come out for the groundwater. So that is semi-permeable. So these are different types. Confined is sandwiched between impermeable layers under pressure. Example is artisan wells. That's how Taranagar water has gushed out from underground. Then we have unconfined. Unconfined is direct recharge water table and marks the upper limit of water table. Perched, we have seen it is localized and sits above the regional water table. Then we have semi-confined. Partial impermeable layers allow it some recharge. Okay, it is not completely closed. Some recharge will be occurring because there is some opening. Then we have fossil. That is ancient non-rechargeable water which are locked underground for millions of years. So they are fossil. Usually we find this in deserts. That's it for today guys. Hope you like it. Please subscribe to Abhiram IAS Academy.